Okay, let's continue our lesson in triggers, and let's have a comparison of database triggers and stored procedures. Okay, so let's define each one of these differences versus these two. In triggers, basically defines with the create trigger. In procedures, defines with the create procedure. In the triggers, we normally have a data dictionary contains source code and uses triggers. But then in procedures, we have a dictionary as well, contains a source code in a user's source or underscore source. In the triggers, basically we implicitly invoke, and procedures will going to be explicitly invoke. So in triggers as well, we can commit, a save point, and rollback are not allowed. But when it comes to procedures, the commit, save point, and rollback are allowed. Okay, these are the comparison between the triggers and stored procedures. Moving on, what is a DML trigger or data manipulation language trigger? So this DML trigger is a trigger that is automatically fired or executed whenever an SQL DML statement such as insert, update, or delete is executed. We can classify DML triggers into two ways: by when they execute before and after, or instead of the triggering DML statements. However, by how many times they execute, once for the whole DML statement, a statement triggers, or once for each row affected by the DML statements, a row trigger. Right. So let's have this creating DML statements trigger. So of course we have to start with the clause create or replace trigger with the trigger unique name. And let's say we have a timing event. This one should be the timing event, or we have a clause or event 2 or event 3 on a certain object name. So we have some error on this syntax, and of course that will also be included from the trigger body. You can see all this action might be performed all the triggers whenever it was defined in anonymous block. Right, so moving on, let's have this example with log depth changes. So let's review each one of this, and suppose what will happen when this trigger execute. So every time the departments table is updated, okay, we have the department table there, the trigger fires after the update operation is performed on any row in the table. So the trigger will go into executes the insert into department statement. You can see it from here by inserting a new row with the specific or specified the department details into the department table. Of course, this is a department table. So a new department with the department ID, example is 400, is with the name of consulting, and the location ID is, let's say, 2500, will be added to our departments table. So you can notice that the behavior of the trigger for this event, it will update the departments table. The trigger listens for any updates whom any row in the departments table. Of course, this action will going to be updated even happens regardless of specific details of the update. Normally, example for which department will going to be updated alone. The triggers will go to insert a new department with the hard-coded values in the department table, which is this one, is 400 consulting and 2500 as a location ID. Right, so it's simply potential and issues that might consider in this kind of examples. Might be inserting redundant data will be there, maybe some inconsistent data will be there, and some logic improvements might be needs also to tailored off. Right, and perhaps what does this trigger do is, anyhow, it's an after update, meaning it has to be triggered type on the department table, In every actions and every time a row of the departments table is updated, the trigger inserts a new department with the 400 here, right? So the result that the same row is inserted into the department table every time an update occurs. This may lead to data duplication and inconsistent result of over time. Right? The final thought, of course, this trigger as written doesn't seems to have a clear purpose other than inserting a new department on every update, which is uncommon and could create unnecessary data, right? But typically, of course, the use of this trigger would involve recording changes, such as logging old and new values of department name or other changes into a different audit or log table. Right, so we'll move once again to the next example, including all events for our next video recorded lesson. Bye for now. What are you doing, Siljan? Huh? Okay.